All right, so we're about to bend the main hoop. I'm doing this without software. I might have already said it, but I don't want to spend the money on $300 Bendtech software for one roll cage. I think I'm gaining a lot more experience with my tubing bender and, trying to do it the hard way. Hopefully I don't regret not buying the software, but because I'm only doing, a couple limited bends, so far I think I've got a good idea of how I'm going to do it. There's two ways that I've kind of discovered how to do this, okay? One, using software. Put your measurements into the software. It tells you exactly where to bend the tubing, which is great. The other way is to basically bend the tubing starting at the center of the main hoop and then working your way out. So what I've done is taken the total length of my tubing, which is 123 inches is what I'm starting with. I believe it to be a couple inches extra on both sides. With your main hoop, you always want it to be a little long so that when it comes time to install the cage, you can cut it, ever so slightly on both sides to fit perfectly on top of your base plates. So I believe this is like 2 inches longer on each side. So then basically to find the centerpiece of this tubing, you just, divide that in half. You get 61.5. So that's where I'm at here. And then we go to the inside of the car because we want to know when we want to decide for our first bend. Where this mark, is on your tubing is going to differ on the size of die you have and what tubing bender that you have to use. So I'm using just a Speedway Fab tubing bender. I think it was like $400 or $500 with one die, and I went with the 1.5 inch die because this cage is going to be an FD spec cage where the requirement's 1.5 inch 095 is the thinnest tubing that you can use. So I know I think like road course cars, they need 1.75 inch by 095, I believe, or at least for certain sections of the roll cage. Don't quote me on that, but either way, FD spec, 1.5 inch 095. So that's what I went with. Maybe down the road I'll get more dies to go with this tubing bender. I probably definitely will. But back to this. So inside the car, I guess what I did is I want to measure the length of the top of the roll cage, the main hoop, where it's flat to flat on both sides. Okay, so I measured like from this point here to the other side is roughly 31 inches. So then I go back to my tube and I start at that center point and I take 31 divided by 2 and measure that out on both sides. So that's what I did here. Center point, 15.5 inches out from the center point on both sides. And then I had a sample bend piece that I used with some welded tube. This is almost a 90-degree angle. It's like 85 inches. Unfortunately, but it works. And then I had to make another piece. This one is roughly 58 inches. And 58 inches is roughly degrees of angle. 58 inches is roughly what I'm going to use for my, it would be considered the second bend if you're using software, but it's going to be my first bend because I'm working from the inside out on this roll cage main hoop. So it should look like this. From the center line, first bend, it's going to look like that. Also, this dummy tubing mock-up piece that I used is 1.5 inch 065 welded tube. And I have determined that with this Speedway Fab tubing bender, 065 might be too thin of material to bend without getting a ripple effect in it. If you know something that I don't, definitely comment on this video so that I can learn how to bend this thin of tubing with this bender. But this was only a, well, this is like 58 degrees, which I didn't think was too much. I can understand when I went up to 90 degrees, that's a lot of force on the bend. And you can tell it definitely rippled there, which just doesn't look as good. I don't know if it totally changes the structure of the material. It might. But I'm not that worried about our roll cage tubing because it's DOM 1.5 095. It's thicker and it's DOM, which is stronger. So I made these dummy mock-up bends, and I'll take this inside. And what I'm going to do is I basically put it in place where I believe the bend will start. So I measure from my black tape where the bend starts on this piece. I measure the distance to my point right here, my point of reference for the straight. And that's how I know it's 3.5 inches there, where the bend actually starts to drop down from where the tubing bender starts the bend. So I measured that distance at 3.5, which will tell me on this tube where I measured 15.5 inches from center, I need to go back 3.5 inches to start this bend. Hopefully that makes sense. That's what I think will work for our first bend. So we're going to do that. Basically, you'll do the exact same thing on the other side of the roll cage once we finish this other side. To figure out the second bend on this side of the main hoop, I basically mocked up this piece again in my car, determined where the next bend would start. And then you had to kind of guess a little bit, but based on where the next tube will start to bend, you want it as close to the sidewall of your chassis as you can get it. This is kind of a quick way to, learn how to bend tube and bend a main hoop without software, but what I've measured, drawn out 100 times already, I think it'll work. So let's see. We've done half the main hoop. Next, we'll be doing the other side. So I've had to turn the tubing around to put it in the other direction because we want the bends to go from the center out, is how I've been doing it on this roll cage. This is again because I'm using my own measurements from within the car, tape measure, a couple mock-up tubes that I'm going from the inside out on this roll cage. If you had Bendtech software, they would tell you, you'd take your measurements, input it into the software, and then it would basically give you your 10-foot piece space or whatever, 120 inches roughly, and it would mark out the first, second, third, fourth bend, and you would do them all just in line, and it would bend the piece all the way around, which is great. But I'm trying to save that $300 since I'm only doing one roll cage. I don't know when I'd do the next one. So far, we're halfway through. With this third and fourth bend, I believe I am going to have to go back and bend the bottom sections on each side, maybe 3 to 4 degrees more. You want to come around me and check out the meter over here? Yeah, come around me, hurry up. See it going up?
Yeah.
You tell me when it gets to 59.
59.
Tell me it's getting there. 59. Alright, so we've got the main hoop in the car, but it doesn't quite fit. But I think that I can make I'm just going to add some degrees to the top 2 bends, and it should bring the bottom in just enough on each side to fit, I'm hoping, perfectly. So we're going to work on that now. I kind of expected this as I was bending it. You just don't always know the spring back on your tubing bender. I did try to research that to see what the degree would be for spring back when you release the tubing from your bends. I think it's a little higher spring back than I was thinking, but I think that's all right. I think we can just bend these a little more and this should fit. So we're gonna give it a go. Finally got this main hoop in the car tacked in, and it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it for a first time roll cage. I guess it could be better a little bit maybe, but I'm a perfectionist and I think this is pretty primo. So I'll show you a quick shot of the roll cage. Well, the main hoop.